What happens when a struggling taxi driver offers a free ride to a broke passenger, only to discover the shocking truth the next day? This is the story of Ethan Carter, a taxi driver trying to make ends meet, and the mysterious man who would change his life forever. The streets were almost empty that night. Ethan Carter tightened his grip on the steering wheel, suppressing a yawn. It had been a long shift, and his body ached from hours of driving. But he couldn't afford to stop yet. He still needed at least 3 more fares to cover rent this month. His wife, Claire, had already reminded him that they were behind on bills. His daughter, Emily, needed new school supplies. Ethan sighed, rubbing his tired eyes. Just one more passenger. Then he could finally go home. A figure appeared on the sidewalk. A man in torn clothes, his hood pulled up to shield his face, raised his hand. Ethan hesitated. Something about the man felt off. But a fare was a fare. He pulled over, unlocking the door. The man climbed in, his movements slow. "Where to?" Ethan asked. A deep voice responded. "Downtown. The Westin Hotel." Ethan's eyebrows shot up. That was a luxury hotel. What was a man dressed like this doing there? But it wasn't his place to ask questions. With a nod, he started driving. The silence in the car was heavy. Ethan glanced at the rearview mirror. The man stared out the window, his face hidden by shadows. "Long night?" Ethan asked, trying to make conversation. The man sighed. "Yeah, you could say that." There was something in his tone, a weight that Ethan recognized. It was the sound of a man carrying a burden too heavy to bear. "I know the feeling," Ethan murmured. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, unexpectedly, the man chuckled. "You don't strike me as someone who's struggling." Ethan let out a dry laugh. "If only you knew, buddy." For the next few minutes, they talked. Ethan spoke about his long hours, the constant worry about bills, and the feeling of never being enough for his family. The man listened, nodding occasionally. When they reached a red light, Ethan finally asked, "What about you? What's your story?" The man hesitated. "Let's just say, people don't see me for who I really am." Ethan frowned at the cryptic response. "Yeah, I get that." The light turned green, and he drove on. Neither of them knew that by the next morning, everything would change. The city lights blurred past as Ethan drove through the quiet streets. His passenger remained silent, his gaze fixed outside the window. Ethan had met all kinds of people in his taxi, some talkative, some rude, some too lost in their own worlds to notice him. But this man was different. There was an air of mystery about him. Something about the way he carried himself didn't fit his appearance. After 20 minutes, they finally reached the Westin Hotel. Ethan glanced at the towering glass building and then at his passenger. "Here we are." The man nodded slowly but made no move to get out. Instead, he turned to Ethan, his expression unreadable. "I need to tell you something." Ethan's stomach tightened. "Okay." The man exhaled. "I don't have any money to pay for this ride." Silence filled the car. Ethan gripped the steering wheel. His heart sank. Another wasted trip. He needed this fare. He had barely made enough tonight to cover gas. And now, he had just driven halfway across the city for free. "Are you serious?" Ethan asked, his voice laced with frustration. The man sighed. "I understand if you're upset. I would be too." Ethan closed his eyes, inhaling deeply. He should kick him out. He should call security. He should demand something in return. But then, he remembered their conversation. This man was struggling too. And in that moment, Ethan saw himself in the passenger seat. Someone just trying to make it through the night. With a tired sigh, Ethan finally spoke. "Forget it. Just go." The man's eyes widened. "You're serious?" "Yeah, I'm serious. Just don't make this a habit, all right?" For the first time, the man smiled. "Thank you, Ethan." Ethan froze. He never told him his name. But before he could ask, the man opened the door and stepped out. Then, without another word, He disappeared into the Grand Hotel. Ethan sat there, staring at the entrance, feeling like something bigger had just happened. He just didn't know what. Not yet. Ethan sat in his taxi, gripping the steering wheel. The man was gone. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. What the hell did I just do? He had been working nonstop, barely scraping by. And yet, he had just let a stranger ride for free. That was gas money. That was groceries. That was one step closer to keeping his family afloat. And now it was gone. Shaking his head, Ethan put the car in gear and pulled away from the hotel. His shift was nearly over. But now, exhaustion felt heavier than ever. He drove through the dimly lit streets, his mind racing. Had he been too soft? Too trusting? The man had played him, hadn't he? Ethan had fallen for a simple scam. Finally, he arrived at his apartment complex. The building was old, the walls worn with time. The elevator was out of service, as always. So he took the stairs, dragging his tired body up to the third floor. When he opened the door, he was met with a familiar sight. His wife, Claire, asleep on the couch, and their daughter, Emily, curled up under a blanket beside her. Ethan's chest tightened. This was why he worked so hard. This was why he couldn't afford to give out free rides. He set his keys on the counter and quietly sat down at the table. The weight of the night settled on him. The stress, the worry, and yet, somewhere deep inside, a part of him didn't regret it. Maybe that was the problem. Before heading to bed, he glanced at his daughter. She looked so peaceful in her sleep, innocent, unaware of the struggles around her. And Ethan made a promise to himself. Tomorrow would be better. He just had to keep moving forward. No more handouts. No more mistakes. But what he didn't know was, tomorrow would bring something he never expected. The next morning, Ethan woke up earlier than usual. Not because he was well rested, but because his mind wouldn't stop racing. His first thought was about the free ride he gave away last night. Had he been too naive? Was that man really broke? Or was he just another con artist playing on people's kindness? Ethan shook his head, trying to push the doubt away. It didn't matter anymore. What was done was done. He needed to focus on making money today. As he stepped into the kitchen, Claire was already up, making coffee. "Long night?" she asked, handing him a cup. Ethan sighed. "Yeah, barely made anything." Claire gave him a concerned look. "Maybe you should take a break. You've been working nonstop." Ethan let out a dry chuckle. "And what? Let the bills pay themselves." Claire didn't respond. She didn't have to. They both knew that wasn't an option. Just as Ethan took a sip of coffee, his phone buzzed. An unknown number. He frowned. Who would be calling him this early? With a sigh, he answered. "Hello." A deep, familiar voice spoke. "Ethan Carter?" Ethan froze. "Yes, who's this?" "I need you to come to the Westin Hotel. Right now." Ethan's heart pounded. The Westin Hotel. The same place where he dropped off that man last night. "Wait, who is this? What's this about?" The voice was calm, but firm. "Just come. Trust me." Then, the line went dead. Ethan stared at his phone, his stomach twisting. This had to be a joke. Maybe a prank. Maybe the guy really was a scammer, and now he wanted more. But something about the call felt different. Ethan set down his coffee, grabbed his keys, and headed for the door. Claire called after him. "Where are you going?" Ethan hesitated. "I have no idea." Then he walked out, completely unaware that his entire life was about to change. Ethan's taxi rolled to a stop in front of the Westin Hotel. He had driven past this place hundreds of times. But today, something about it felt different. He stepped out of the car, adjusting his worn-out jacket. The doormen eyed him suspiciously. Ethan ignored them. He wasn't here to impress anyone. He was here for answers. And he was about to get them. As he entered the grand lobby, his eyes widened. Polished marble floors. Giant crystal chandeliers. Everything about this place screamed wealth. And yet, somewhere in this world of luxury, someone had called him. Someone was waiting for him. But who? And more importantly, why? A sharply dressed concierge approached him. "Mr. Carter?" Ethan nodded hesitantly. "Right this way, sir." He was led through the lobby, past well-dressed guests and business executives. Every step felt surreal. Then, the concierge stopped in front of a private VIP lounge. He pushed open the doors, and Ethan froze. Sitting inside, sipping an expensive coffee, was the man from last night. But this time, he didn't look like a broke passenger. He looked like he owned the entire building. Expensive suit, gold watch, a presence that demanded respect. Ethan's heart pounded. What is this?" The man smiled. "Ethan, have a seat. We need to talk." Ethan sat down slowly, his mind racing. This had to be a mistake. There was no way the broke man from last night was now sitting here like he owned the place. Except, he clearly did. "All right," Ethan said, crossing his arms. "What's going on? Who are you?" The man smiled. "I suppose I owe you an explanation." He leaned forward, resting his hands on the table. "My name is Alexander Reed. I own this hotel and several others like it." Ethan's breath caught. Alexander Reed. That name sounded vaguely familiar. And then it hit him. He had seen it on billboards, business articles, even TV interviews. Alexander Reed was a billionaire. Ethan's stomach turned. "You're kidding." Alexander chuckled. "No, Ethan. I'm not." Ethan shook his head, still trying to process. "So let me get this straight. You had money this whole time? You just pretended to be broke?" Alexander nodded. "Yes." Ethan clenched his jaw. "Why?" Alexander's expression softened. "Because I wanted to see something." "See what?" Alexander leaned back. "If kindness still exists." Ethan stared at him. "You're telling me this was some kind of test?" Alexander nodded. "I needed to know if there were still people in this world who would help a stranger, even when they had nothing to gain. And you, Ethan, you did." Ethan swallowed hard. Last night, he had felt stupid for letting that man ride for free. But now, that simple act of kindness had brought him here, to a billionaire's office. Ethan's mind raced. "Okay, so why am I here? What do you want from me?" Alexander smiled. "It's not about what I want, Ethan. It's about what I want to give." Ethan's chest tightened. "What do you mean?" Alexander's next words would change his life forever. "I want to help you, Ethan. The same way you helped me." Ethan's heart pounded. "Help me? What does that even mean?" Alexander smiled, calm but firm. "I see something in you, Ethan. Honesty. Integrity. The kind of man who does the right thing even when no one is watching." Ethan scoffed. "I'm just a taxi driver." "No," Alexander said, shaking his head. "You're more than that." Ethan shifted in his seat. He still didn't understand why he was here. But before he could ask, Alexander continued. "I know what it's like to struggle, Ethan. I wasn't always rich. I had nothing once, just like you. The difference? Someone took a chance on me." Ethan frowned. "And now you want to do the same for me?" Alexander nodded. "Exactly." Ethan let out a breath, shaking his head. "This is insane. You don't even know me." Alexander smirked. "I know enough." He pulled out a sleek folder and slid it across the table. Inside this folder is a job offer. A real career. Something that will change your life forever. Ethan hesitated before opening it. His eyes widened. Inside was a contract. A management position at one of Alexander's companies. With a salary that made his taxi earnings look like pennies. Ethan's hands shook. You're serious?" Alexander nodded. "Dead serious." Ethan exhaled sharply. This felt like a dream. A once-in-a-lifetime chance. But then, a thought hit him. Why me? Why not someone more qualified? Alexander smiled. Because character is more valuable than a resume. You passed the most important test, Ethan. Now, I just need to know, will you take the opportunity? Ethan stared at the contract. Everything he had ever wanted. A stable job. A future for his family. a way out of the endless struggle. It was all right in front of him, and all he had to do was say yes. Ethan stared at the contract. His hands trembled. The words blurred together as his mind raced. This was everything he had ever wanted. A real job, stability, a way out of the constant struggle. But something held him back. He looked up at Alexander. "Why me?" Alexander smiled. "Because you remind me of myself. I wasn't always rich, Ethan. Someone gave me a chance once. Now, I'm giving one to you." Ethan's chest tightened. This man owed him nothing, and yet, he was offering him everything. Ethan swallowed hard. "What if I'm not good enough?" Alexander leaned forward. "The only difference between success and failure is the belief that you belong there. And trust me, Ethan, you do." Ethan exhaled sharply. Was this really happening? Was this real? He glanced at the contract one last time. Then, with a deep breath, he picked up the pen and signed his name. Alexander smiled. "Welcome to your new life, Ethan." And just like that, everything changed. Ethan couldn't believe it. Yesterday, he was a struggling taxi driver. Today, he was stepping into a corporate office, wearing a suit that wasn't rented. It felt unreal and terrifying. As he walked into his new workplace, employees turned to look at him. Some whispered. Others simply stared. Ethan could hear their thoughts. Who is this guy? He doesn't belong here. Did he really just get hired by Alexander Reed himself? Ethan swallowed hard. This was a whole new world. A world where people wore expensive suits instead of worn-out jackets. Where meetings were held in conference rooms instead of a taxi cab. And Ethan wasn't sure if he could keep up. His first days were brutal. There were terms he didn't understand. Processes he had never heard of. He made mistakes. He felt like he was drowning. Every night, he went home exhausted. He wanted to quit. He wanted to go back to what was familiar. But then, he saw Claire and Emily, and he remembered why he was doing this. One night, Alexander called him into his office. "Rough week?" he asked, smirking. Ethan let out a dry chuckle. "You have no idea." Alexander leaned back. "You know, I failed my first job too." Ethan froze. "You did?" Alexander nodded. "I made every mistake in the book. Thought about quitting 100 times. But I didn't. And neither will you." Ethan felt something shift inside him. For the first time, he believed. Maybe he could do this. Maybe he did belong here. From that moment on, Ethan pushed harder. He studied late. He asked questions. And slowly, he started to change. He wasn't just a former taxi driver anymore. He was becoming something more. Someone he could finally be proud of. And he knew this was only the beginning. Months passed. Ethan was no longer the nervous taxi driver who didn't belong. He had learned the business, earned respect, and proven to himself and everyone else that he deserved to be here. One evening, as he was leaving work, he noticed something. A man outside the building. His clothes were worn out, his eyes tired, and he looked exactly like Ethan did not too long ago. Ethan froze. It was like looking into a mirror from the past. And in that moment, he understood everything. Alexander's words echoed in his mind. "Someone took a chance on me. Now, I'm giving one to you." Ethan took a deep breath and walked toward the man. "Hey," he said, offering a kind smile. "Do you need help?" The man hesitated, but finally he nodded. And Ethan knew it was his turn to pass the kindness forward. Because sometimes, one act of generosity can change a life, just like it had changed his.